First of all, thank you so much for having me. It means a great deal to be here tonight. I'm so grateful to Paige and Cindy for doing a lot of publicity for me out here and helping get people out. It's a treat to be here. My parents live in Weehawken, New Jersey. I just dropped my 19-month-old daughter there as I headed out here. And my brother lives in Fort Lee, and Edgewater. It's right on the border there. They both live on piers on the water, which is really, really beautiful. And I live just over the bridge, literally directly across. I live on 98th and Columbus. And anyway, I've been on this whirlwind book tour across the country. I was just telling Cindy that when you turn a book in, you haven't even started the work that's in front of you. It's this unbelievable experience of, since it's been published, I've been on a book tour across the country, so I'm very regularly in cities that I've never been to, on airplanes, and lots of rental cars, and I don't think I've ever eaten so much takeout food in my entire life. So I roll into cities late at night, and I've got basically 3 speaking events a day, and so that's why I needed the microphone tonight, because my voice, I don't think, could survive projecting to this group. So just to give you a little bit of background, and I'm not going to be speaking too long, so don't worry about it. Maybe, 25 minutes or something, with some Q&A. I know you all have busy lives too, and I'm just grateful to be here sharing my book. I started Social Skills the business is only about 4 years old, but I really started it about 10 years ago. My background is in public relations, and I worked for an international agency for many years, and I broke off and started my own firm in New York City. And so my work it consisted of garnering media coverage for clients and for corporations, and at the same time, I was also media training clients. So just as soon as I would book a placement on 60 Minutes or in any you name it publication, I would have to media train the clients. And that actually became one of my specialties at the firm that I was working at. So I would do these 2 to 3 day media training sessions with some pretty famous people that you would think, my gosh, aren't they just naturals at this? Or no, not necessarily. And we would sit in these training sessions for 3 days, sometimes 4 days, depending on what they needed. And I would always sit in these sessions with my clients, and I would see them kind of come to life and suddenly have so much more self-confidence and self-esteem, just from going through things like your handshake, what your body language says, your eye contact, what are your talking points, how do you handle questions that are a little bit difficult that you're going to be asked. And so I would say to myself, everyone could use this exercise. It's this incredible opportunity to sit with someone that's not your mom, that's not your husband, that's not your wife, not critiquing you or nagging you or kind of giving you that chiding comment, but a professional that sits with you and goes through probably one of the most valuable skill sets that you use every single day, and it's your social interaction and communication skills. So fast forward a few years, I also love teaching. I've been passionate about teaching my whole life. I didn't wind up going into it, and I wanted to start teaching again. So my first position was at Fordham in the Graduate School of Business. I was teaching marketing and PR, and I later moved over to New York University. I was just dying to be with some younger students. So I started at New York University, and as the years were ticking by, I noticed that a lot of my students, brilliant academically speaking, were sometimes missing the soft skills. And it was exactly those soft skills that I was teaching during media training sessions. And I kind of got to that point in my teaching life where I wanted to make sure that I left my students with something really valuable before they left and I never saw them again at the end of the semester. And I realized that that was the most valuable lesson I could teach them. It was at a time where I, over the years, was seeing more and more of the backs of computer screens. So in a lecture hall like this, where I'd be teaching, rather than looking at each of you, I was probably by the 5th year of teaching there, all I was looking at were the backs of computer screens. So I wasn't even having any interaction with students. I would ask them during certain classes to close their laptops because I really wanted to see them and interact with them. And I also noticed that my students would come in and kind of shuffle in and no one made eye contact, and it was very rare that I had a conversation with a student, and had a couple of parents call me to talk about their students' grades, and just thought to myself, gosh, like, what's happening here? What's happening? Why are parents stepping in to talk about their children's grades and manage difficult situations that a child really has to, or a young adult really needs the skills to be able to do that, to go and talk to a teacher and talk about a grade that wasn't what they were expecting. And at the same time, part of what I was teaching them was how to build out a PR campaign. So I was teaching PR 101 at New York University, and a big part of building out a PR campaign these days is via social media. So my students would friend me on Facebook for a 1-week period. And during that 1-week period, I would see some things that I was truly aghast to see online, because they would forget that I was their friend for a week period. And it was all of this combined, and then this final day where I opened up my Facebook page. This is going back about 8 years ago, or maybe 7 years ago, yeah, gosh. That I just realized, wow, I have to stop. I have to just stop this class, like dead in their tracks. So I walked in that day and I just said, close your computers, put everything away, we're going off the syllabus. This is what I saw on my Facebook newsfeed this morning. And I blurred out the faces and the pictures and said they weren't discerning. But I said, with a right click of my mouse, I have this stored in my computer right now. So I want to talk about the fact that the internet is a permanent memory bank. And what you do online has the ability to stay there for the rest of your life. And it was that day that I really started to teach not only the digital piece, but I also realized the best lesson I could leave my students with was teaching them the vital social interaction and communication skills that we all need for the rest of our lives. And I knew that these were the skills that were going to really set them apart in a job interview. When I started this program, it was about 7 years ago. The job market was really, really challenging. My students were all coming to me saying, I can't get a job, and even if I get a job interview, I can't get past the first interview. And really, what is it that's going to set you apart during a job interview? These students were coming out of New York University, but sit any student down next to someone else with great credentials, and I say the person with the great social interaction and communication skills is going to win the interview over. So I started the workshop, the class at New York University, and I was teaching everything from what your body language says about you, to your eye contact, your facial gestures, how to shake hands, how to communicate effectively. And I also realized, my gosh, we're never taught these skills anywhere in life. I mean, you're lucky if you have that family member in your life that might have sat you down and talked to you about things, or maybe even a mentor, someone who you really admired as a child. But why not teach these skills? They're so vitally important. They're the perfect match to academics. And so this class that I was teaching started to pick up a lot of steam at the university, and my students were walking out with better self-esteem, better self-confidence for interviews. I was getting letters back from students saying, "Thank you so much for this workshop." Now, believe me, I'm not a rocket scientist. I don't have a scientific background in teaching this stuff. I'm not a miracle worker, but I figured out a way to teach these skills in a way that's really enjoyable for anyone. And the university started asking me to give it to the outgoing seniors in Steinhardt, which is the Department of Media, Culture, and Communications, because they wanted their students to be interview ready. You know, like I said, they had the academic piece, they just wanted their students to have the social and emotional piece. So as time went by, I just would sit in these workshops and I just thought to myself, why not teach these skills younger in life? They help anyone out. They help a child out in school with relationships with teachers, let alone relationships with peers, which has an enormous impact on how a child does in school. And so I modified that class from New York University, and I started volunteering in New York City public schools. So I would go around and kind of give these workshops, and I really just wanted to see how kids responded. So I went as low as high school, then I moved into middle school, then I went down to elementary school, and I saw how receptive kids were to these lessons, and how teachable these skills are. It's just all about the way you position them and the way you teach them. And kids loved the program, and parents did too. And I'll just show you a little example of what I do with kids. And pretty much any workshop I start, when I'm doing a workshop on first impressions, is I start out and I ask kids, so what are social skills? What are these? I get all sorts of responses. The skills that make you social, or all sorts of things. It's really cute. All right, manners. And I'm like, oh gosh, manners, right? I don't even use the words manners and etiquette when I talk about the skills, except for in Paige's class, because I did do dining skills. So I say to them, all right, well, I'm going to start out, and I'm just going to show you one of the most important social skills that you use every single day. And it's your first impression. They're all like, okay. So I say to them, I'm gonna walk in, I'm gonna make 2 first impressions on you. And I just want to hear back from you a couple of words that describe me after I walk in. So,
so I come with a bell, and so I say, all right, when you're ready for me, ring the bell. So the bell goes off, and I walk in.
So I say, how did I just come across? And I hear angry, not happy, not confident. Depends on the age of the kids too. So, kids as young as 4 and 5 years old will say to me, not happy, not nice, not kind. And I'll say to them, so what's interesting, I didn't say a single word to you when I just walked in. And you guys just decided that I came across as angry, not confident, not happy, mean, shy, bored. And they're like, wow, yeah, you're right. So then I say to them, I ask, so how long did that take? How long did it take me to walk in and for you to decide all those things about me? It's 3 to 5 seconds. That's how quickly you make the first impression. So I say to them, all right, well, I'm going to make my second first impression now. And I want to know what you think of it. So I say, so how did I just come across again? friendly, nice, confident, happy. And I asked them, so, wow, again, it was 5 seconds that it took me to just walk in here, and that's how I came across. So then I say to my students, I'd like for you to tell me, or I have these cards where they write down this information. I want to know how you want to come across when you walk into a room. How do you want to come across? So they all write down their 3 words. In the years of doing this, I have 99% of the time, a child will write down nice, friendly, or happy. Kids want to come across this way. And I think most adults do too, but the problem is, we're never taught how to do it. We're never taught how to do it. And I always, in classrooms, I'm not trying to make kids into something that they don't want to be. I'm trying to make sure that however they want to come across to others, we're going to work on making sure they come across that way in the classroom. So I say to them, so I take a look at all the cards. Pretty much all of them say nice, friendly, happy, confident. It's adorable. I have stacks of these cards in my office because I love to keep them if I can. And I say to them, all right, well, there's 3 adjustments that I made on my first impression. Okay, I'm going to show you. I went from this to this, number 1. I went from this to this, number 2. And I went from this to this. So I made a change in my body language, I made a change in my smile, my facial gesture, and I made eye contact. And I know those sound like really simple things to do, but the problem is when you walk into a room, it's the last thing you're thinking about, right? And how many of you get shy when you walk into a room or nervous? My gosh, I go on the Today Show about every other week, and I get so nervous, this is true. I'm always so nervous. But the only thing that helps me become less nervous before I go on a show is preparing myself. And that's the only way that we become more comfortable with these skills. So if we teach these skills, and if we repeat them and practice them, it's just like anything else. It's like soccer or tennis, right? That's the way we get better at them. And for heaven's sake, I think it's a darn good investment in your time to teach these skills at home. Your kids will use them for the rest of their lives. It will impact their lives drastically. To be able to walk into a room with eye contact and a smile, teachers respond differently. They have more friends in their lives. They have better relationships with others, increased self-esteem. So since I've been teaching these workshops, all of a sudden these scientific studies are coming out to support exactly what I'm talking about, that I say is not rocket science, but it's just that we have to teach the skills. So now there's scientific studies, one was done at the University of Loyola in Chicago, showing that teaching social and emotional skills leads to an 11% increase in academic scores. It leads to increased self-esteem, increased sense of self-confidence, decreased levels of aggression in school. And so I suddenly have all this wonderful evidence to support what I'm up to in the classrooms. And I'm the worst saleswoman, so I always forget to talk about my book during my book talks. So I'm gonna just put it out there. So my book is in the back, which I'll be signing at the end of my talk and selling in the back. I wrote this book, it's called Social Skills for Success, because I wanted to basically equip parents with the how, the what and the how to teach at home. Because I'm a parent too, and I have to admit that I have my 19-month-old at home, and I've read information about how I should be raising her and what I should be doing, but sometimes to just have something in front of me that tells me, like, all right, well, this is what you should do with sleeping, and boom, 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 boom. that's more helpful to me than having, I've received hundreds of books and videos and et cetera, over the years of what to do as a parent, but it's been, I hardly had the time, first of all. So what I did in this book was to try and make it as simple as possible, and there's 10 chapters in the book that I say to parents, if you could just spend an hour at home on each chapter, it's a 10-hour investment in your time. You will equip your children with a social and emotional toolkit. And whether they use it tomorrow or whether they use it 3 years down the road, I promise they will use it. I hear this all the time from parents that, okay, some of them use it immediately, some of them they see them use it later down the road. But if you teach these skills at home, you can also practice them at home. And I took my 10 years of teaching experience and exactly what I do in the classroom and put it into a book for parents in a way that you can teach it without coming across as being the nag or the critic or the manners maven in your household because kids just turn the other way when they hear that word. And so often as parents, we tend to be in the corrective mode when we're teaching these skills, right? Why didn't you make eye contact? She said hello, why didn't you say hello? Or you get in front of, you see your friends that you haven't seen in a while, and they're like, so how are you, sweetie? Fine. So what's new? Nothing. So how's school going? Good. So that's one of the chapters in the book, is conversational skills. How to start conversations, how to keep them going, and how to close them. Gosh, nobody ever taught me that. It took me a while to learn it. I wish I had learned that when I was 12 years old. So teaching those skills and how to teach them at home in a really fun way. So in the classroom, I love doing a lot of role playing because that's the easiest way to show kids how these skills can really change their lives. So I'll bring a kid up and say to them, so can you ask me 2 questions? And they think about the questions and it's like, okay, so how are you? And I just say, fine. So what did you do today? Not much. And then I say to them, can you ask me those same 2 questions one more time? So how are you? I'm good, thanks for asking. Things are going pretty well. Busy at work, busy at home with my 19-month-old, and just keeping my workshops going. How are you doing? And I say, all right, can you ask me the second question? And I do the exact same thing. And then I say to them, so which one do you think was better? Hands down the second one. Why? Why was that better? Because you shared more information. Okay, shared more information. Which one made me come across as more friendly? I mean, kids want to be friendly and have friends. It's a primal human need in all of us. And so that's one of the greatest ways to teach these skills. And then practicing them at home, it's taking out a tennis ball. And whoever's got the tennis ball is doing the talking. Can't pass the tennis ball off until you ask a question of someone else, right? Teaching kids, how to ask questions, and the fact that people love to be asked questions shows that you're interested, and it shows that you care about people. And, we go over questions you can ask anyone. And so that conversation game with the ball, we start out with 30 seconds. And I mean, it's hard in the beginning. It's hard to keep a conversation going and making sure that ball is passed off back and forth pretty equally. Just like I say to them, it's just like a soccer game, right? If one person is dribbling the ball the whole time, there's no game. Conversation is a game. 2 people are playing it or more, and everybody's got to be a part of it. Otherwise, it's not an interesting game. It's not a fun game. So in this way, it starts to become fun and relevant to a child. So I do this in 10 chapters of the book. The first chapter is face-to-face, make a good first impression. in person. Chapter 2 is face-to-face book, make a good digital first impression, because these days our children are entirely online. They have a digital footprint as early as a mother starts putting, or a father starts putting pictures on Facebook. So it's really important that what I talk about in chapter 2 of my book is that we're digital parents. Chapter 3 is conversation skills. I think it's called putting a final end to the one-word conversation. Chapter 4 is phone skills, dialing in and dialing out. Oh gosh, I'm really putting myself to the test with all the chapters. Anyway, the book goes into gratitude and attitude, the value of everyday thoughtfulness, teaching kids how to be grateful and express gratitude in a meaningful way, and how that impacts their life so drastically. There's also scientific studies to support the kids who express gratitude daily are happier. I also cover dining skills in the book, so simple ways to teach your children not only how to set the table, but how to dine effectively. It's a big part of socialization. So equipping your kids with the know-how to dine well, because we're doing it all day long. Sometimes 3 meals a day we're eating with other people. My final chapter is the F word, which is a chapter on failure, and what an incredibly valuable lesson failure is in a child's life. There's so many silver linings to failing at something, and so many valuable lessons. There's a wonderful quote in the back of my book from Michael Jordan. Actually, Jordan, may I ask you to bring a book up for a second? Thank you so much. Jordan is my colleague this evening who's going to be helping me sell books. I got really lucky tonight. Thank you so much. Okay. So the last chapter, I just love this quote so much. I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. Actually, it just made me a little bit teary-eyed, because when I was in high school, I was standing up in front of a crowd just like this, and I had a panic attack. And I couldn't speak in front of people for 8 years. And it has brought me to today where I can go and speak in front of any group, and I still get nervous. But I failed, and I worked so hard at something because I knew I wanted to be able to do it. I knew that I needed to be able to do that in my career to get ahead. I couldn't even talk in front of 4 people when I first started my career. But I worked so hard at it. And I used to ask people if I could speak in front of them. And I volunteered for the American Heart Association after I had a stroke when I was in my 20s to talk about stroke and the warning signs of stroke, just because I wanted to get in front of groups of people. And I'd be shivering, and I'd have cotton, feel like I had cotton in my mouth. But I did it. And that lesson in a child's life is so valuable, even though we want to shield our kids from failures. Of course, it's natural that we want to do that. But there are so many silver linings in failure in life. And so, my book came out in July. Like I said, I'm on this book tour, and I'm so grateful for your time tonight to be able to talk to you about what I've been up to, and I'd love to open it up to any questions if you have any. Yes?
I like the idea of the book, and I think it's very important because we interview and accompany a lot of people, and those few seconds are the key, whether we hire them or not. Especially in the guidance service business, that is important. It is important how you present yourself in those few seconds. But I have a son that is 6 years old. You mentioned dining skills, and you mentioned also eye contact. We have learned one way to do those things. But when we have a diverse community, very multicultural, like Orly, we have cultures where looking straight into the eye is not the proper thing to do. So I have a little bit of difficulty in teaching my son how to interpret that and how to create a bridge between cultures. I just want to hear you comment on that.
So I go to schools all over New York City, very diverse communities. The social skills program is actually piloting in the Bronx, in Queens. So I went to a lot of schools where there's, the first thing I ask kids is, how do other cultures greet each other when we do first impressions? Because every culture is different, right? Do you come from a different culture, and what is your greeting that you do?
We learned the Western American way to do that because our principle is we do business in America, so I train him to do that first.
Okay.
Because that's how he's going to be competing in business. Anything else is secondary. It's more like a luxury.
Correct.
So he has to be exposed ways to socialize. But the transition is I want him to be able to socialize between cultures. But I need him to understand that bridge. Also, when it comes to dining skills, it's the same thing.
So what I like to say, I follow the exact same philosophy that you do in your corporation. So because we're in the United States of America, so we have customs and ways of doing things here, and that's what I teach. So I'm teaching the US customs for doing things, and there are many other customs and cultures that people are bringing to the table or to a business meeting. But because we're in the US, yes, to compete in business, I'm teaching the skills of how to shake hands effectively when you go into an interview in the United States of America. However, what I like to say to kids is that I've gone to many other countries before, and I learn their customs and cultures before I go there. So I learn how to greet, because if I'm going to stick my hand out for a handshake in China or in India, it's not correct. So teaching that wherever you go and being an empathetic human being to other customs and cultures is really important. And also, if you were to be going to an interview my brother works at Eizai, a Japanese company, really understanding their culture and how they greet, and making sure that you're doing your homework in advance. And if your child is going to a dinner at someone's home that's from another culture, doing a little research on what their customs and cultures might be at the dinner table. But because I'm here and in the United States of America, and this is where I grew up, and I'm teaching the skills that are specifically for the US, but I like to teach kids that, yes, this is what we do here, but really helping them understand that there are so many other customs and cultures in our world that we have to adapt to sometimes if we're going to a job interview, or if we go to those cultures, that yes, we learn those customs. You're welcome. Anything else? Yes.
Hi, David Sarno. We spoke very briefly before you talk about helicopter parents, and so the last 15 years, certainly a lot of media attention over very controlling, involved parents in the socialization in the day-to-day lives of kids, that they don't go to the playground by themselves and create interactions. They're in very controlled settings. And how do you encourage parents, and under what circumstances, to let their kids have an independence, freedom, especially socially, to cultivate these skills that you're trying to teach?
I'm so happy about that. Independence it's actually a chapter in my book, Be Independent. It's one of those topics that's also often very hard for parents, is to let go and to set your children free. And you addressed the helicopter parenting generation, which I think I did see quite a bit of it working at New York University and over the last 10 years or so. Just that kind of notion that the parents come in and hover over their child's life, doing every single thing for them, from filling out the college applications, to calling the teacher to talk about the grade, to, I was on a panel a year ago talking with the head of a school in New York City, and she said that she had gotten a similar call from a parent to talk about her daughter who had just started a job at this school in New York City, to talk about her health insurance. So it's this incredible disservice to do to our children, is to not set them free to be independent beings and to function independently in this world. I don't know if you guys have, but I have heard about parents going with children to interviews. Yeah, I kid you not. And it's an incredible disservice to a child. It's invaluable to give your child not only the skills, but the recognition of trust, setting them into the world as independent beings. When your parents trust you, it's a wonderful feeling. And it's making sure you provide the skills to, and you see them being put to use, to trust them out operating independently. Making sure that we teach the skills of how to operate out in public, how to be on time, how to be organized, how to navigate the streets on their own. I can't tell you how many kids come into my workshops that don't know their addresses at ages that I don't even want to repeat, don't know their addresses, don't know phone numbers, and those are such valuable skills. Things like making phone calls. Most kids in my, not most kids, probably half the kids in my workshops have never made a phone call because they've never been, everything's been done for them. And I do the exact same thing as I do in this chapter on Be Independent in the digital parenting chapter, is equipping your kid with the knowledge to be independent or to go online, equipping them with the knowledge, the understanding, and the practice with you to do so effectively on their own. And yeah, it's work. It's definitely work for us as parents.
How about responsibly on their own?
Yeah, well, yes, responsibly on their own. So I do, when I do this Be Independent chapter, and I do it in the workshops, is I do this whole lesson on independence, managing money, timeliness, responsibility, organization, planning out what you're doing. And then I set them off on an excursion out on the town, and I stand behind them. And I have a checklist that they all know that I'm checking off: keeping to the right, having your money ready before you get to the counter, making eye contact with the cashier. Did you get back on time? So I tell them what time you have to be back by. If you're not back on time, you need to make a phone call. If you're more than a minute late, you need to make a phone call because someone's going to start worrying about you. Did you get to the location on your own? You know, everybody's got a task that they do during this workshop. But yes, I'm so happy you brought up that question, because those are some of the most valuable skills that you can equip your children with as a parent. Yes?
I have a question. Is there a time where these skills can actually be counterproductive? For instance, young children who are overly confident or overly independent. Can this, I have a very spirited child who's 6, and he's overly confident. So, well, you know, and I feel that this is good if it's properly channeled, but, you know, we're at that age where we have to really try to channel it in the right direction. So that it's almost like it can be counterproductive, because it's almost taken as he's, well, very bossy, manipulative, etc.
So I say that when you teach these skills, and I bring this into the classroom a lot too, I'll say to a child, so I could walk in like this, I could walk in like this, or I could walk in like this. So I quickly show a child how it can go the other way too. And also just one of the coolest things that we can do these days is many of us have smartphones, or we have the ability to use flip cam or get our hands on some sort of recording device. Record your kids. It's so much fun. They love it. It's a ball. It's so much fun to say to your kid, all right, so we just learned about first impressions. Okay, walk out. I'm going to take you coming in and making a good first impression. I say this is not going to be counterproductive. It's actually going to be really productive in helping your child. They identify this stuff themselves. That's the coolest part of it. You practically, sometimes you don't even have to do much lesson stuff in this, because your child will see how he or she comes across really quickly. I remember when I used to play tennis, I used to have this coach that used to always tell me, Faye, you keep hitting the ball into the net because you keep closing your racket face. And I was like, I kept doing the exact same thing over and over and over. And then he taped me. And I was like, oh, I'm closing my racket face. Okay, I'm gonna change that. But the taping is wildly effective. And also the lessons in conversational skills, and I delve into this in the book too, is you can be a great conversationalist, but you can also overdo it. Because if I just talk about myself the entire time and about my life, and I never ask any questions, and it becomes all about me. And I always say to kids too, we have 2 ears to listen and 1 mouth to talk. So we should be doing double the listening than we are doing talking. But yeah, so it just sounds like with a lot of kids, you have to turn up the dial with their social and emotional skills. Sometimes you have to turn it down too. And it'll be a great lesson in self-awareness for your child.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Great suggestion, taping them.
Oh, good. It's so much fun. Oh, I cannot suggest it more highly enough. It's my greatest joy in the classroom. I don't always get to tape because I have too many kids in the classroom, but it's super fun. He'll learn a lot. Anything else? All right, well, I'm going to be in the back, and I know you have the rest of your meeting. And I'm sorry, I think I probably went over 25 minutes at this stage.
All right.
Thank you again for having me.